Welcome back, Jer Sklar. This is quite a treat. We had you on about a month ago, maybe a little bit more for Time of Your Life, and
Hmm.
now we're here to talk about a film that you did not write or direct. But before we get to that, yeah, how are you? What's been going on since we talked about the movie?
Oh, it's been great. I actually played the movie Time of Your Life, played at the Music Box for a week in Chicago. And, I got to say, it was such a heartening experience in so many different ways because obviously it's really cool to have your movie play in a movie theater, in a movie theater that you grew up. I grew up going to the Music Box Theater as like my sort of go-to like art house movie theater. So that was just a thrill alone, regardless. But due to COVID, it was like the particular timing of the movie was everyone's like first time back to the movie theater.
Hmm.
And people were vaccinated and hugging, and we played some live music beforehand with my band, and it was amazing. I mean, it was really beyond. I'll also say that, for all the talk of movie theaters' demise and that it's this antiquated thing and young people don't want to go to the movie theater anymore and all I can say is from a filmmaker's perspective, your movie isn't a movie until it's playing in a movie theater. I mean, I know that's not true. I know that's kind of like obnoxious to say, because there's plenty of great movies that have been made that don't get to a movie theater. But just for the filmmaker himself, yes, it didn't. Even though the movie technically was out in streaming at the tail end of 2020, and it was amazing, and felt so cool to get a movie out there and DVD and Blu-ray and what. But I'm sorry, it's just like it wasn't really like a movie to me yet until strangers were paying money and getting their popcorn and turning their phone off. And I don't know, but that's to
I
me
just
that
had
was just like it's not going anywhere. The movie theaters are not going to go anywhere because I don't care who you are or how young you are. It's the ultimate. It's the ultimate to see strangers watching your movie in the dark. I don't know why, but it is. It's great.
I was
Yeah.
just having a conversation with David Fowley about this for A Quiet Place 2, which was our sort of first movie. Yeah, he actually went to see Time of Your Life at the Music Box, but it was our first sort of big return to the big movies, and the experience of the audience, like post COVID, was terrible. So we've kind of decided, the Music Box is kind of our jam because it's more of a respectful kind of, you're going there to see, independent films or classics, or to really appreciate the quote unquote art of cinema, as Scorsese might call it. But
Yeah.
the multiplex, I don't know, that's going to become more of an event, I think, for us. I agree with what you're saying. And I think it's cool because the way I always imagine filmmakers is, even when they're shooting for television or making TV, because TV is becoming more cinematic, is they're thinking of this as a big screen, a big grand experience that's meant to be kind of communal and not solitary.
Yeah. I mean, it does change, how you think about telling a story, and that's okay. Like, but I don't, I mean, I'm older. Like, I didn't grow up with the movie screen in my hand that I could find any movie wherever. I had to go to the movies, and then
Oh,
even seeing like, I remember when Amazing Stories, the Spielberg anthology series, came on in like like the late '80s or mid '80s or
mhm.
something. To me, that was like, oh my God, there's sort of a movie-esque looking thing on my square TV. Like, how amazing. And now it's just, yes, the quality, the production value and quality and A-list actor talent that you can now see on your phone or on your flat screen at home or whatnot is it's amazing. I mean, it is amazing, but I will not call those cinematic experiences. I have a lot of hard time with um, watching. They're still TV shows to me.
Yeah.
You know, they're still TV shows to me, and most of these TV shows, by the way, I honestly think would be better served as a movie.
Mm.
There's like the first two episodes are great, and then they just takes a nosedive for five episodes, and then kind of picks back up for the last two or three. And
Yeah, that's something they're still trying to iron out. But and don't get me wrong, I love or loved the experience of going to movies. I agree that these things are made to be seen on a big screen. It's just that when I'm sitting there and there's kind of the obnoxious audience members with, talking on their phones, kicking seats, which is ironic, just not treating it as if they'd spent, a lot of money to leave their house to go out and be around other people and experience something. It takes me out of the movie. So I'm almost more equipped to be immersed in something when I'm at home, even if I'm just watching it on a screen that's 20 times smaller.
It's interesting. It's interesting. You know, getting to turning it over to Man Push Cart.
Finally, yes. Sorry.
You're talking about, no, it's all right. No, but it is on point, and not just a clumsy transitional sense. This whole past year, I mean, I'm obviously in the minority of people. I don't like watching serious things at home. I don't. And and this whole notion of we got to make movies bigger, so people like, oh, I got to go see that in the giant movie theater. And to me, I'm of the mindset of, I can actually watch a Marvel movie or whatever, like on my phone, no problem. And I'm not even ragging on them. I like a lot of Marvel movies. I'm just saying, like, it's very active. It's just like they're telling the story, and there's just action, and it's action, and you're kind of watching it and not watching it and back in. Oh yeah, I didn't miss anything. And you're not missing any subtleties of human behavior if you take your eye off it for a second. Whereas the art film, like a Man Push Cart, I mean, it's kind of a generalized term to say something is an art film, whatever, but a movie like Man Push Cart is, or a movie like, let's say, Under the Skin. You remember this movie, the Jonathan Glazer movie with Scarlett Johansson?
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, the crazy alien movie. Yeah.
Yeah. See, it's like I can't watch that at home. Like, yes, I can, but I have to really make like special arrangements with my dog and my phone and my life and pull the chair and the couch, like get it. Yes, I need really like so totally concentration for me to watch a film, and it's hard for me to do that at home. It is. It's hard for me to do it.
I agree. It's a weird paradox for me too, because I saw Under the Skin once in a theater and I was completely bowled over by it. I bought the Blu-ray and it is sat unwatched on my shelf. It's just one of those things I know I'll probably get back to, but it's almost like a totem, a reminder of the fact that I once saw this in a theater. But I don't know that I'll ever watch it again unless they do some kind of a revival somewhere where I could go out and see it in like at the Music Box. It's so strange.
I saw it at a packed house at the Cinerama Dome, which is now closed.
Yeah,
on like opening weekend of it. One of the greatest experiences I've ever had cinematically. And Man Push Cart is the interesting thing personally, and why I found it sort of weird that weird. Yeah, it was weird that you were like, hey, I think I want to talk to you about Man Push Cart, because I'm certainly I'm certainly no expert on the movie or the filmmaker, but I'm vastly becoming like really interested in him. Raheem, I'm gonna get his name.
It's Ramin Bahrani.
Ramin Bahrani.
Mm-hmm.
See, and Ramin Bahrani. So with Mr. Bahrani's work, like, I'm looking forward. It's a strange thing because when this film came out in 2005 or so, I was really trying to see it. I was out in LA trying to sell, horror movies and whatnot and genre stuff. And for some reason, I just was like really drawn both to the title and to the the feeling of the immigrant experience in America, which is not my experience. But I remember, like, as a young man thinking of, like, where are all the movies of all the different kinds of people in this country? Like, there are so many different kinds of people in this country. Where are their stories? I just, as a selfish audience member, I want those stories. I want to see them. You know, where are they? And it's really exciting that we're now, what, 15 so odd years removed from when this movie came out. But now it's very much like, yeah, we're finally getting those stories financed, you know? And it's really interesting. And Man Pushcart was, with all my talk of, I can't sit down and turn things off and pay attention to a movie. And especially was the case this past year with COVID. I don't know. I'm not proud of this fact, but it's just like, I really had a very hard time. I had a whole plan. I was going to watch the greatest movies that I had missed and keep copious notes on them. And that's what I was going to do with my COVID year. And I didn't do it. I just watched a lot of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and Family Guy. And like, I couldn't go there emotionally to the stuff that I usually love. And finally, one night, like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'm perusing the Criterion Channel, which has gotten virtual dust on it from my lack of use last year. Like, really embarrassed about it. But I'm perusing through it. I'm like, Man Pushcart, perfect. And it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, finally, I'm gonna turn the phone off. I'm gonna get my special, like, movie theater situation set up. Dog is asleep, been walked. All right, I can just absolutely go into this movie that I've been meaning. This movie also, Goodbye Solo, 99 Houses, 99 Houses or Homes? I forget.
99 Homes, I think, yeah.
Yeah. And watch this film. And so really, in a way, Man Pushcart was like my first movie back on my own personal recovery from just being too, I don't know, sensitive, or I don't even know what. I couldn't get through movies during this whole COVID time. It was really nuts. I was just wanted to escape, wanted to, like, smoke a joint and watch, Family Guy. It was really weird. It was almost like obsessed. Like, I couldn't believe why I was doing that. But then Man Pushcart, like, is almost like, all right, let's get back on track with having a soul and a brain. Not that I like Family Guy, I like Mystery. Those are great escapism stuff. But it's like, all right, let's get back into what you give a shit about.
Well, not to put you on the couch or anything, but it sounds almost like, because Mystery Science Theater and Family Guy, those are television. Those are things that are meant to be watched in the home. I wonder if you were just trying to, there was some part of you like, I can't go out and see movies, so it just feels weird to watch movies. I don't know if it was even as deep as that.
No, it's something I don't have an explanation for it, because I love movies. I'm definitely, I'm a little short of being a cinephile. As I was reading an article from Quentin Tarantino before I got on the line with you here. I'm like, oh God, this guy knows movies. Oh my God, this guy knows movies. People think I know movies. I don't know movies. This guy knows movies. But yes, I like a lot of different kinds of films. And this thing, this movie has first of all, it's so different than how I approach cinema, films, just the way it's shot. And it really attracted me. I mean, I'm very, in essence, I'm really against too many close-ups. Like, I'm very kind of old school in, like, I like it big and wide, and then if I need to cut in for something, maybe there's one close up in a scene or something where it's pivotal. Or I think the close up gets overused a lot in this day and age, especially because they know they're shooting for TV, they know they're shooting for iPhones. it's the use of this close-up. And I want to get it. I really should have. I'm very bad with names, so I think Simmons is the cinematographer for
It's
the film.
weird because it's Michael Simmons, which if you take the D out, that was my dad's name.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that I was watching some of the special features on the Criterion Blu-ray, and they mentioned Michael Simmons, and I did like a double take looking at my TV. It's yes. I'm sorry, I was interrupting.
No, I was just gonna. Yeah, it is funny. No, I was just gonna say that Bahrani and Simmons, and I guess I was watching this morning the movie again with what's it called, with commentary.
Commentary, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is good. It's Mr. Bahrani is doing it, and Simmons are there, and the actor Ahmad. Am I getting his name right? Let's see.
Ahmad Razvi.
Ahmad Razvi,
playing Ahmad. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So I guess I understand it right. So the movie is a study in how to make a gorgeous, beautifully shot film that is sort of, in a weird way, it's like a marriage of perfect, grounded, real, like neo-realism, as all the critics had sort of said about this film. It's very Bicycle Thief, like it's very, but there's such a beautiful mix of professionalism with the acting, with the gaffing, the lighting, and the cinematography, and pure run and gun. Let's just grab this person. I can, they're not an actor, but now they'll be an actor because they're going to be on camera. There we go. You're an actor. Let's do and then combined with lots of, sprinkled in lots of very talented actors. I believe the woman from Spain who played the lovely, other, what was her name again? Let's see.
Her character's name was,
I got it. Leticia Delora.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
She played Noemi. I think that was how her name was pronounced, yes. Or at least that's how it's spelled. But yeah.
So, and Ahmad was a rock star of sorts, had some hits in Pakistan for real. The actor, and they
is that right?
I didn't. Correct. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So a lot of this was the first time he was ever acting. He had worked in a push cart in New York. There's a lot of blending going on with this film and the way it's made. And it was very interesting to me to read reviews from the time, and then very recently watch and hear the commentary. Because as usual, I love film criticism when it's really well studied and done well, but mostly it's not. And it's usually just they're guessing, and they've never made films, and they don't know really what they're talking about. Honestly, like some of the greatest, one of the greatest critics, Roger Ebert, amazing writer, amazing critic, incredible. Not a filmmaker by his own admission. He's not, but they're talking, they're talking about, he was talking about in his review that to talk about direction or acting or writing with a film like this is sort of a waste of time because it's a film made of happenstance and I'm like, I doubt it. And then I'm listening to the commentary this morning. I'm like, yeah, I knew it. He had such an interesting approach, and it is an approach that mixes, like Cassavetes, mixes. The lay viewer watches a Cassavetes film, and they're like, oh, so they're just like kind of riffing. They're making up dialogue on the spot, or they're just kind of, and you see that in a lot of sort of amateur, I want to make a Cassavetes kind of movie or a Dogma style movie, and they just kind of, and we'll just kind of, we'll wing it, the scene's got to go from A to B to C, and then we'll just kind of riff. And you see these movies, and you're like, A, you guys don't know how to improvise, and B, you're making a large mistake. Movies like Man Push Cart, the director, Bahimi, I keep thinking I'm going to.
It's Bahrani.
Bahrani. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Bahrani. Yeah, it's. I know. So it's insulting. So
No, I'm sorry.
Bahrani,
I didn't mean to
Bahrani.
yell into my mic. I just
No. It's a very embarrassing thing with me. It's I get anxious when it comes to names, and even names that I know.
I'm the same way. I got my
yeah.
cheat sheet computer off to the side here, so I'm like looking. Yeah.
So Bahrani and his and a cinematographer Simmons, you know, Bahrani had a very specific plan, and it was they worked on a script in detailed fashion. Then they brought in their actors, and months before they were going to shoot, he wouldn't ever show the script to the actors. He would say, cool, so in this scene, the dialogue goes like this. Bada, 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 bada. He'd sort of recite, kind of verbatim from the script, the dialogue. And then he'd say, okay, let's film some rehearsals. And let's do the scene. And obviously, I don't expect you to memorize the lines that I just, spewed forth, but you get the gist. And if there's one thing I need you to hit line-wise or story information-wise, make sure you remember this. That's about it. Everything else, you can kind of make up your own version of what I just told you. All right, let's go. So there they go. And then they shoot a bunch of rehearsals, and they would be putting their own take on what the director wanted them to say, and what the actors, Ahmad, and would want to say. And then it wouldn't stop there. And then the writers would come in again. Let me get my cheat sheet going. It was Bahrani as well, the writer director on this. Okay, so Bahrani, so he would then basically make a transcript of this rehearsal and pretty much just shape it, a transcript, and sort of fuse the transcript and the script together, or maybe jettison some of the script that was too scripty. And it's like, no, I like the way that went. Let's go where they kind of took it. And then there'd be a new script that was kind of this amalgam of the two. But then when it came time to shooting, he still wouldn't show them the script. And he would say, okay, so now he would almost do the same thing, except now the lines he was bada-bada-bada-bada-ing to them about were their cadences, their words that they had worked on in rehearsal. And now they were kind of riffing. So it's very fascinating to me to learn that. I mean, there's such a process and such a detailed effort involved in this movie that seems like a dream that just unfolds from this guy's character. There's so much planning involved in these movies that often seem like, oh yeah, they just they run and gun it, and they were riffing dialogue, and so much planning involved. So I was really fascinated to hear about their approach. And their approach, they knew that they had, I'm sorry I'm going on and on about this.
No, this is what we're here to talk about.
I am really passionate about this movie. Yeah. And I was going to say, basically, something that he said on the commentary that was just really striking to me was in regards to, like, look, we knew we didn't have any stars in this movie. We were probably figuring that no one's even going to see this movie, honestly, when we made it. So let's just make the movie that we wanted to make. And because that there's no and they also shot a lot on one take. I don't even think a lot on one take. They actually shot every scene on one take. Yes, they cut into the scene at times, but it's very, very, I'm sure there's some exceptions to that, but according to them and the commentary, everything was shot pretty much in one take. Yes, a wide shot would then maybe become a close-up. Would that, right, there'd be different moving masters that would move into a close-up or a two-shot or a reflection shot. But if you watch it again, you'll notice it's every scene is pretty much actually one take. And yes, they'll sometimes cut into the take to go to the close-up of someone else that they had moved to naturally, but realized, oh, we need a little pacing. So it's also expertly edited, even though it's shot on one take. Yeah, sorry, you were about to say something.
No, I mean there's a lot to unpack there. I will have to go back and watch this and look out for that. I just have the I don't have Criterion Channel. I've got the Blu-ray that they put out earlier this year, and I didn't listen to the commentary yet, but I was watching. There's like a 20-minute conversation between Bahrani and who is it? Film scholar Hamid Dabashi, who is, I guess, was one of his instructors in school back in the 90s. And they became friends sort of after they were, in class. And one of the fascinating things is this teacher was telling him, when you started making movies, you would always tell me, you would act out the story, and I was more fascinated by the stories than than the movies themselves. I mean, he's a big fan of his students' work, obviously, but this storytelling idea of acting things out and rewriting based on the sort of the improv of the people telling the story comes from his roots or is like growing up in an Iranian American household where books were more prevalent than movies. He talked very affectionately about his parents and how their kind of literary influences sort of seeped into his brain and affected the way he decided to tell stories as a filmmaker. It was really cool.
Yeah, it is. That sounds fascinating. I need to check that out.
Now, just real quick since I said I don't have Criterion Channel, you said you watched the movie with commentary. Do they have all the extras and stuff that they have on discs on the channel?
They do.
That's pretty cool.
It's amazing. The one weird thing about the Criterion Channel, I guess it's not their problem. I don't know what it is. Depends on the TV you have. It's like I had this TV that like it wasn't compatible with, what TV do I have? It's basically like I forget what kind. Yeah. It's like your basic flat screen, what's the Japanese manufacturer? I forget, but it's
Samsung or something.
Samsung, thank you.
Okay,
Samsung flat screen TV, basically, and for whatever reason, it was not compatible with with like certain models of flat screen TV. I'm like, what?
So odd.
So I had to get Roku, which is fine. I like Roku now, but through Roku, through streaming, I could get. It's too complicated. That's the other thing I hate about TV. Well, you got to be a friggin' like that mission control, scientist to navigate your television these days. I know it makes me sound really friggin' old. I'm not that old, actually. It's really difficult.
We're about the same age, and I share your frustration. People tell me, oh, you got to get an Amazon Fire Stick or whatever so you can watch TV, like watch the internet through your TV. I'm still so stuck in my ways that when it comes down to it, if I have to stream something off my laptop onto the TV, I'll hook up an HDMI cable to the back of my Samsung to watch it that way. It's just, I'll get it someday, but by then the technology will be out of date. But back to Man Push Cart. I mean, we haven't really even talked about what the movie is. It's about a guy named Ahmad who is pushing a food cart through New York, trying to make ends meet. He also sells DVDs on the side, just out of a black bag for however he came across them. It's like, $8 and 2 for $15. And I think a lot of them look like they're porn.
They're porn. He's selling porn DVDs.
Yeah. And he gets a surprising amount of takers because I've seen that happen like on the streets of like Chicago or whatever, but I never see anyone take people up on their offer. So I guess there's a market for it, or at least in 2005.
Yeah, they're all over New York. Yeah.
The other thing is I've only been to New York once, and that was about 21 years ago. It was 2000. I missed the whole food cart. When I think of food cart, I think of like the little old timey hot dog carts, they're just like these little things you push, but these are basically food trucks without a cab on it. And they're pushing these giant buildings throughout traffic in New York. I mean, just the watching that kind of phenomenon and following this trade from picking up all the materials and the food and going to I guess the wholesaler to get your stuff, to setting everything up before the sun comes up, to serving people, and then doing it all over again. I mean, at one point he goes to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then later he reveals I think to Naomi that he has to get up at 3 o'clock to start his shift. I mean, this guy's running on like very little sleep, but he's sort of the master of hustle up until a certain point in this film.
Yeah. It's oh man, it's a friggin' heartbreaking story in a lot of ways. That I want to stress something. It's look, let's. There's a sort of elephant in the room with me since I mispronounced Bahrani's name. And that is, this is like two white guys, well, I'm Jewish. I don't know if you want to technicality.
Well, I'm half black. So
okay, there you go. Half black.
Yes.
Oh, good to know. I didn't know that. All right. Well, it's a little less of an elephant. It's a small elephant in the room. But we're talking about immigrant life. We're talking about Pakistanis here in this country, sometimes leaving lucrative life and jobs, but the situation was too tough for them politically or financially, who knows? And they come here and are starting fresh, and it's completely not my life experience. I mean, right. It is completely, and there's a strange thing about people talk about, and they actually talk about this a little bit in Hollywood, the sort of bullshit like that Hollywood puts out, and I say bullshit with quotes on it. That's sort of, I'm quoting something how they talk about it in the commentary. And it's something I don't like, actually. I love Hollywood. I grew up on Hollywood movies, the assembly line of these movies. It's true. A lot of them, they're not deeply subtle personal takes on life. They are mainly driven by escapism. Mm-hmm. And let's take a break from reality for a while. And they're mainly driven by like what my grandmother used to say, which was like, I like movies that I can forget about life for a while. Like, yeah. And I used to kind of be like snicker at her saying that and be like, but it's true. That is kind of what Hollywood does best. And there's a needed place for that.
Yeah. And
however, there's also I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it also transcends, the country in which it's produced. I mean, the Hollywood blockbuster, has a history of being a global phenomenon because,
right.
And other countries have their own, movie industries and things of that nature. But it is this sort of global cultural need for, escapism and fantasy. We just happen to be the biggest, loudest exporter of that.
Absolutely. And predominantly movies that used to just star white people and white men in lead, like it really is super, like, if you've spent any time in LA, which I lived there for like about 17 or so years, you just realize that, these people are actually, they're good people, they're nice people, but they are making movies about themselves, where they live, who they're like. It is this very suburban white experience that you're watching films through. Mm-hmm. And it's so, to me, growing up, and it's like I like to say I grew up with like loving Spielberg and John Carpenter, and then I saw David Lynch's Blue Velvet, and I go, oh my God, film can go inside somebody's ear. This is, I had no idea. It really opened my mind. And I always say there's like my pre-David Lynch's ear moment and my post-David Lynch's ear moment. Because after that, I was just like, I need to escape my existence, which is like pretty boring and pretty like well documented in the world and is not real. Like, I need to go. And I can't just go travel and go experience the world. I need to see the stories from the world. And in particular, I wanted to see American stories, but from Americans. which are a lot of them are immigrants. A lot of us, my family were immigrants and came here from Russia, um, and I just was. It was just such a gratifying experience to watch this film, to get like, it's almost like nutrition. I felt after I watched this movie, I just was like, that was a great pure glass of water I just drank. It was like I didn't even realize how dehydrated I was. And after watching the film, I'm like, oh my God, that satisfied such a thirst I didn't even realize I had.
Well,
So
I think part of that, and it's something I felt the same way, because this does, I guess, neo-realism. I think that might be a phrase that used that some people have ascribed to this movie. It's not quite a documentary. You can tell that it's a movie, but the moviness doesn't really come out in terms of the storytelling, except in like a couple of odd places, like where Ahmad walks out on his on a job that he has. There is the flashback to what happened to his wife, and you kind of get you get a little bit of context, because there's a bit of a mystery surrounding what happened to his wife that he had, and he always got a young son. They give Bahrani gives just a little bit of information, but he doesn't go into over expository mode, I think, which helps to keep with the realism, because there are some things that we'll know about people who've experienced tragedy, but we'll never see the full picture from their point of view. But
absolutely.
I think one of the things that I loved about this was it's not traditional in that there's a structure where you have to have a beginning, middle, and an end where the character gets what he wants, or there's some kind of a big, statement or confrontation about every issue that's brought up in the movie. There definitely is the subtext of being an immigrant from a negative standpoint. Particularly Ahmad is in a bar one night, and he doesn't tell this story. He overhears a group of people telling a story that they had experienced of, his post 9/11, and some guys attacked this dude and cut him up pretty bad and called him a terrorist and all this other stuff. So you get a little bit of that, but the film is mostly focused on the positive aspects of the American immigrant experience, from the community of these kind of strangers in this giant melting pot of New York, who they probably come from diverse backgrounds in terms of, are you an Iranian or a Pakistani or Jewish or Palestinian? I don't know. They don't have little name tags saying, hi, my name is Haifiz, I'm from X. It's just these people seem to find each other, and they have this shared bond of being in this place that they are not from, and they're all trying to make it and support each other. But then you go even deeper and you see that there are some characters who appear, if they're not immigrants themselves, they come from probably immigrant families, and so they are adopting the sort of American dream while holding on to some of the cultural values that they were brought up with.
Right.
Like Muhammad, who is
Right.
He's like, I don't know if he's a day trader or whatever. He's a very well-to-do guy who comes to the food cart regularly. He takes an interest in Ahmad, and recognizes him as, they're both, like Ahmad is from Lahore in Pakistan. And I think Muhammad either was from there or his family's from there. So they have that connection. He's like, yeah, let me give you a job. And he gives him a job painting his apartment. And then there's a sort of relationship that forms. And so you get the idea that, yeah, culturally, there's an idea of family and friendship and helping each other, to develop. But then that sort of American idea of not exactly cutthroatness, but self-promotion, and like, this guy, I know who he is. He's a former pop star. I'm trying to become a promoter in this country, so I'm going to use this guy to open up, avenues for myself. And when things get really inconvenient, it's not that big a stretch to toss him aside. Oh, and there's this girl that he knows that I like, so that's another avenue that I can kind of use him.
Yeah, it's so, the dynamics of that triangle are wrenching without ever being talked about. Right? I mean, this movie is I train, I got my start as an actor, and trained in something called the Sanford Meisner technique. And there's a quote from this famous teacher, Sandy Meisner, where he would say, what is it? you know, an ounce of, I don't know what's bigger, an ounce or a pound. Maybe I'm mixing it up, but he would say an ounce of behavior is worth a pound, or is worth a ton of words, or a pound of words. And it's a very, I don't think he even necessarily meant it as a sort of like how to act on film, or what is the difference between stage acting and film acting. And there's lots, we can have a whole different debates about that, but that's this movie kind of in a nutshell. I mean, this movie is just pure behavior with some words sprinkled on top of it, right? It's like, but anyways, that relationship is so wrenching between Mo, as he gets called, that's his nickname that he's gets adopted, yeah.
And I think going back to what you were talking about earlier about the way this script was kind of formed, with the actors kind of doing improv and Bahrani taking note of that, it is all about behavior in this movie, and the words that are sprinkled on top are words that feel like they came from the natural behavior, because they were what the actors, that's just how they would talk to each other and figure it out.
Yes.
And so, yeah, there's not a whole lot of, there's a little bit of that kind of movie foreshadowing when Ahmad is able to pay off his cart, and that's not really a spoiler, but he talks to the guy who sold him his cart, and he's like, all right, it's all paid off. If you save up another 15 grand, then you can basically be my full franchisee and take a part of the business. And he's like, well, yeah, that'll be like 5 to 7 years from now, because I'm barely making it. Yeah. But the guy says, now be sure and get the insurance on this thing tomorrow, first thing. Right. So I'm like, okay, that's a pin. This is going to come back. And of course it does. We don't have to get into how it comes back. Yeah. But even that, in a regular film, that would stick out like a sore thumb and annoy the hell out of me. In this movie, I'm like, okay, how exactly is that going to come into play? Because I'm sure it's going to be very smart and lead to a situation that, even if I might be able to predict what's going on, I want to see how these actors, these people, these characters navigate through it, because it's going to be unpredictable.
Yeah. It's true. There is really very few like weak links in this movie in terms of just showing its seams of being a super. I mean, it's, I don't know what the budget was on this movie, but yes, this is definitely. I mean, this falls under the heading of probably not much more than $20,000. I bet. You know what I mean? To make this film.
Well, but that's the thing, is it doesn't look cheap. I mean, as we talked about before, the cinematography is amazing. And also, you think of those super low budget kind of movies, and we talked about this with you making, Time of Your Life. You could have just, for your first feature, 2 people in a room talking, or like in a diner, kind of pseudo Tarantinoing, but you went for the ambition and really using the city as an environment. Bahrani does the same thing here. And there's a scene where Ahmad is running through traffic, looking for something, and he's running through a lot of traffic, and it doesn't look like the kind of traffic where they shut down the street and said, okay, we're filming a big movie here, gang. It looked like it looked like they got very lucky.
It's all real.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I got to listen to this commentary. Yeah.
They said so. They're like, and this is, oh my God, this is where he almost died. Shit. Yeah. Like he falls at one point in the movie, and the car, this is not really a major spoiler, just like there's a little mishap, and it winds up, he gets control of it again, but he falls and the cart gets away from him a little bit. Totally real. Didn't mean to happen. Happened. Life flashed before his eyes. Trucks on either, like, God.
Well, even because at that point in the movie, things are kind of going downhill for that character. So I was waiting for when he caught the cart, I was waiting for the back end of it to like fishtail into a parked car or something and have a whole other set of problems. So to find out that was real and that could have actually happened. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He was really pulling and pushing that cart. That was all real. There wasn't any help. It was all, the amount of real people. Oh, here's the other thing I wanted to mention, because I just thought this was, I would have watched this commentary just for my own edification, because I just learned so much from it. let alone to be prepping for this. But mostly Simmons, the cinematographer, shot with very long lenses, like from very far away, on tripod, locked down. There's that, surprisingly, they said this at one point, there's a scene where there's a lot of handheld stuff going on, handheld camera stuff. And they said, yeah, this is probably one of the few times we used handheld in the movie. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Everything is very locked down and panned, and it's very, I think they had maybe 1 or 2 dolly track shots in the movie. That was it. Everything else was just locked down on a tripod, panning and tilting, with maybe a couple moments where there was some handheld. But the incredible, it also gave it, with this long lens, it gave it this very cinematic look of this compression, and the back is all out of focus, and we're just looking at the hands of people grabbing their coffees, and those great shots of where you're just sort of like behind his shoulder, right? And you're just kind of like his hands coming in there, and it's just, and all these boxes within boxes that are in the compositions. He's just constantly trapped, and then he gets like another gig at like a nightclub through Mo, and then there he is in another box. He's still like, now he's just taking tickets and punching tickets, but there he is in another kind of, all by box, I just mean like there's so many box, like the compositions are just boxes within boxes, and it's amazing.
But that's something that I think I intuited, or I maybe I recognize it subconsciously, but now that you're talking about it, you're right. And those boxes, I'm sure, represent the constraints that he is constantly trying to break out of. And
yeah,
it is interesting.
And yet also keep going. Like he's almost fighting to stay in the box, even though it's kind of his financial prison.
Well, but
it's all he's got.
Right. I mean, and getting back to what we had talked about a bit earlier, he was a rock star back in Pakistan, and I think he came to the States for some reason. His wife was doing something over here. I don't know if it was school or a career, but he came over here for love, essentially, and to have a family. And in the flash, because you're always wondering, how did she die? What was the relationship like? He doesn't get along with her parents. They're essentially raising his young son, and that's a struggle. But in the flashback, because my other question was, when did he start this food cart thing? Was this something that he picked up after she passed away because he had no other recourse? But no, in that flashback scene, we see them together in the food truck, or in the food cart, and they seem to be, happy. Like this is something that they're doing as a family business. So then later when we see him in the food truck, you realize how isolating that is, to have to be trapped in that space that he used to share with his wife. It's almost like the scene in other movies where there's a death and like the husband or the wife is in the bed that they shared, and you see this giant empty space. There's almost like no room for that empty space, but you feel it.
I will admit that I need to look at that scene again. It's funny you should say that particular scene. As I'm watching it again this morning, and I wasn't sure that was a flashback. To be like, you might be right. I'm not sure. Like when you said flashback twice here, and I was like, I wasn't sure. Is that a flashback, or is that a woman with her baby coming in from the cold, and he's giving them a moment's warmth?
No, it's definitely a flashback because she
might be right. I didn't.
Because she applies the dinosaur sticker. We see a shot of her applying the Triceratops sticker to the inside of the cart. And what's cool about that is, and I picked up on this earlier in the film, when he's washing down the cart, he soaps everything up, but then he soaps around the Triceratops. He eventually gives it like one very ginger kind of wipe down, but that is, that's very important to him.
Yeah, and I'm not going to reveal the ending. I do really want people to see this movie, even though there should be a statute of limitations on spoilers. I'm sick of this, like, spoiler. Hey, the movie was Casablanca we're talking about. Let's go. Like it was, So, but I'm not going to talk about the ending. I wish I could talk about the ending. So that's all I'll do, because I'll tease it. It's a friggin' perfect ending.
And I'm glad you feel that way, because I feel that way too, because it's not tidy, and it's almost like, okay, where's the sequel? Because I want to know what's going to happen this with this character, because there's a lot. It's a very open-ended thing.
Where's the sequel? Where's the man push cart action figures?
The man push cart playset. Yes,
that's sort of borrowing from what's that? Waiting for Guffman.
Well, yes, my dinner with Andre.
I've got my dinner with Andre action figures, and that's right. But yes, it is. I'll say this: there's something. We were talking about the character of Muhammad, who's goes by Mo as a nickname, which I did think was really like sadly funny. There's this moment in the movie that is, it's just really interesting. To me, it was hilarious. And I'm not sure if it was meant to be hilarious, as they got to it in the commentary. And the moment is, I feel okay finding it funny, but I could also see someone not finding it funny. Basically, he sees another Pakistani pushcart salesman driving by in a car in this one scene. And he's like, "How you doing, man? Hey, how's it going?" And the guy's like, it's terrible. He's just got like such a look of desperation and sadness in his face, and his young man looks could almost be a doppelganger for Ahmad. And he says, I can't take this anymore. I'm sick of, and he talks about another guy that they both know. He's like, this guy got a job in Albany. He's working in Albany at a Dunkin' Donuts, man. He's living the dream. Like, I gotta do that. And just the way he put it, I'm just like, it's so not funny that it makes me laugh. If that's because it's just so like, Jesus, working at Dunkin' Donuts in Albany is the dream. Okay.
But I think,
you know what, the way they talked about it in the commentary, I really was like, oh, dude, you don't friggin' know. That wasn't really meant to be funny. So it's one of those, it's a weird, like, cultural, I feel almost uncomfortable about it. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's funny that you found it funny. I didn't find it funny. I found it, kind of refreshing is the wrong word, but just the way that he was talking about, you've got Ahmad, who's a guy who's, working this food cart, servicing people who are making way more money than he'll probably ever see.
Yeah.
He's got a friend who is apparently doing better than he is, because he's driving his, car in New York City, talking about, my job's really, working me to death, long hours and everything. So he's complaining about that. But then he talks about this guy in Albany who's working at Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if he's working there or if he's a franchisee. He says he's living the dream. So I get this feeling that he's like, he is a franchise, manager at this Dunkin' Donuts. And that gets back to the idea of, this kind of simplicity, the idea that you can go into a job, work there for 8 or 10 hours, go home to your family, provide for everybody, and, maybe go on a vacation a couple of times a year. There's a simplicity to that, as opposed to either barely making it on the streets of New York, killing yourself for 22 hours a day, or working in some purposeless, soulless, corporate job where you're just at a, chained to a desk. At least that guy at Dunkin' Donuts is like, meeting people, talking to people. He's doing well enough that it's not like it's not like if he misses a day or a paycheck, his whole family's going to be on the street. He's doing all right for himself.
Yeah. He's got a social security number, and he's got some insurance perhaps through Dunkin' Donuts. And no, I think it's a really telling thing about me and sort of my, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. All right. So it's like, I grew up like absolutely a privileged, little shit. No. I mean, but it's like, it was one of these moments. I see that, I watched that scene, and it elicited like the only laugh for me. And almost, I'd love to talk to him. I'd love to talk to the filmmaker about it. I mean, I'd love to talk to like Bahrani about it and see his expression as to like, because I think that laughter is more like a laughter at me in a way. It's like, like, oh my God, have I had it like so friggin' easy, comparatively speaking. I haven't had it easy, but certainly comparatively speaking. And yes, I don't know. I can't quite communicate it, but it's a really interesting, because also Ahmad never complains outwardly, really. Like, he's never actually bitching and moaning with words to people about, I've got it rough. I can't take this anymore. I got like, and so strange, in a way that I thought worked, by the way, I thought it worked really well.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a releasing of pressure before we start ramping up the pressure again for like the last act of the movie, because that's where it comes. It comes almost right as a sort of a third act-esque development, where we get to like see this kind of doppelganger of, in a way, of Ahmad say like, and his eyes are just like, they're so pained, and he's just like, oh, I can't fucking take this, this is terrible. This is like, oh, I just want to go back to Pakistan or get out of the city, see some grass, some trees, something, like our friend so-and-so who's out in Albany working at a Dunkin' Donuts, man. I mean, that's the dream. That's the dream. And it's like, jeez. Yes, it's more of a laugh. It's like, my dream is to become, like a world famous filmmaker, right? And like their dream, that particular character's dream is just to get a solid job in a nice, decent enough place where you can afford an apartment and see some lawns and grass and go back to work, and the job is stable because it's, a big corporation. And so many interesting things to unpack in this movie about the American experience, and then also to take a look at your own reaction to the movie as not being of that experience, and just so damn thought-provoking, right? Soul-provoking.
Well, it's that, but it's also the fascinating thing to me is, and there's some stuff in here that reminded me of Kevin Smith's Clerks, particularly in the opening scene where he's, brewing the coffee, and there's, the close-ups of the day-to-day of just opening up a convenience store. He's doing the same kind of thing with the food cart, except there's no score. It's just the ambient noise of him like unpacking boxes and setting up coffee cups and things. And then later in the film, when he's running through the streets of New York to find something, it's a very frantic scene. But whereas most filmmakers would include, okay, here's the action-packed, like thumping soundtrack, so that the audience will really feel this guy's tension. His tension is just the sounds of New York with honking horns, a jackhammer ratcheting. So it is an intense soundtrack, but it's the kind of emotional heartbeat of the city coming through. This character as he's trying to find something he desperately needs. But as far as the experience and the storytelling of this Ahmad character, I'm sorry, I got derailed my own thought because I just went back to that traffic scene.
Right? Yeah, that'll derail you. Really,
yeah,
it's harrowing.
Yeah, but just the simplicity of his day-to-day life, and the fact that we're going into this movie.
You're talking about like a clerks comparison,
right?
You were talking about like a clerks comparison, right?
Yes, but it's okay. I'm back on track. It's Bahrani and Smith, both their first like really big swings. Well, I guess this is a couple movies in for Bahrani, but they took what they knew and they're like, this could be a movie. Whereas I think about, could my life be a movie? Do people want to see me getting up at 4 a.m. to watch movies and wash dishes and get the laundry going and make breakfast for my kids and all this other stuff? Possibly not, but I feel like Bahrani or even Kevin Smith, 20 years ago could have done that and made it seem really appealing, which means that people's lives are inherently interesting and relatable and the perfect for fodder for films. We don't have to have these giant Marvel movies for escapism. We can escape into what other people might consider the mundane reality of their own lives and be completely enraptured.
Yeah, and it's sort of well, look, when movies are great, and even, whether it's micro budget or a giant Hollywood epic, they do two things at once, don't they? You escape, but you're also sort of safely getting in touch with yourself and the way things are, in a comforting way, comforting in that you're just not alone.
Yeah.
not as alone as we feel, or as I feel. I should just speak for myself. But that is kind of my relationship to the movies in general. They're both like, let me take a break, let me escape, but get in touch with life in a deeper way. And those are the best movies do that. The best movies, and it doesn't matter whether it's a $5,000 movie, $5 million, or $100 million movie. If they can do that, it always amazes me. And Man Push Cart, boys, it really does that. It's really burned. I'm so inspired by it. I thinking of doing a little comparison between, as filmmakers do, like, oh, the movie I just made, now I'm watching this movie that's totally couldn't be more different in tone, in approach, subject matter. And, one could say, like, I made this sort of low budget movie the way you shouldn't do it, which is like to try to make it look like a $2 million Hollywood movie. But I hopefully, at least, I was trying to do that, to sort of say, like, to Hollywood, hire me. I can make your money go very far, and I need a job. So I was first and foremost making an artistic project, but yes, the DNA of filmmaking, at least my experience of it, has been you're dealing with money and what you want to say about life at the same time. So quite honestly, I was scared to make a $5,000 run and gun, couple people in a room, here and there, some shots, slice of ordinary life movie. Not that I don't like those movies. I mean, when they're good, they just friggin' amaze me. Like Man Push Cart, which is great, actually. Definitely qualifies as like a masterpiece of sorts. It's also, I believe it's his first film. I believe it's his first feature. And then he made Chop Shop and Goodbye Solo, I think. I might be missing a couple. Maybe I am missing a couple. Maybe
he did a short called Backgammon. That was his first movie in '98, and then he did a movie called Runner, which I think might have been an actual, like, an Iranian picture, because he was born and raised in North Carolina, went to Iran when he was like 20 or so, and then made some films over there, and then came back to the States. Gotcha. This all came out in that interview segment, which I recommend you check out, because it's fascinating perspective. But yeah, so this is definitely an early project, and I also recommend checking out Backgammon. You get to see his sensibilities come out, but without the polish, and it's kind of cool to hear how he made that movie. But I mean, you're talking about 7 years between Backgammon and this film coming out, and the growth is just spectacular. So yeah, I agree. I think Man Push Cart is a bona fide masterpiece, and it also speaks to what you can do if you've got the imagination, the intelligence, the sort of the networking of being able to pull people together, even on a limited budget, which I think is also something that you were able to do with your film. So I can kind of understand why this would speak to you on levels that even I don't, it didn't speak to me on those same levels.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it spoke to me, as I'm pursuing, what my next feature is going to be. I'm, part of me really does want to try my hand at making something like Man Push Cart. I don't know that that's going to be the next thing I make, nor do I feel confident that I could really pull off something like that. It's much easier said than done, right? Just so much easier said. I think a lot of what appealed to me too with this film is I am also are you familiar with Robert Brasson, the French filmmaker from the probably like 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s? I think he was,
I've heard the name, but I can't say that I'm familiar with the work.
So Robert Brasson Yeah, he's definitely worth checking out, especially if you're enjoyed Man Push Cart. Um, there's a documentary on Brasson. I think it's called The Hands of Brassone, because he was very into photographing hands, and they used that a lot. They knew they were kind of riffing in a way a little bit on Bicycle Thief, but also a lot of bit on Balthazar the Donkey, which is a Brasson film, and Pickpocket. And Brasson was a big influence on Paul Schrader, is a big influence on Paul Schrader. And he has this great theory that you could probably look up, you can Google it, called sound and image according to Robert Bresson. Or so there's some sort of listing of it's like 10 bullet points. And he was a absolute believer in working with non-actors that he would call models. And he would make them repeat over and over. He would do tons of takes. By the way, Man Push Cart, they would do tons of takes. They would do a lot of these master takes. They wouldn't shoot coverage. They refused to shoot coverage. And they would do about 20 to 30 takes each take. Sorry, I digress. So Brasson, he was a big believer in why double, don't pay attention to doing audio that is just communicating what we're seeing. So by this, I mean, okay, puts the coffee cup down. I guess we need a coffee cup sound there. Why? Maybe we have sound of the street and we don't hear the coffee cup going on there. It's creating an entire world, huge world outside of this little box that this guy lives in. And it was heartening to me to know that I spent a lot of time and probably the most money on my film on audio and post-audio sound. And really, that's music and sound are essential to me. I personally believe you can't actually have a real movie unless your sound is just gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
You can have everything else. You can have a bad script, bad actors, and bad image, and people will go, "Oh, I liked it. I don't know, it's good," But if the sound isn't great, it's not even a real movie. It's not a movie. So Brasson was very into the painting of sound out that you weren't seeing. Not all the time, not 100%, but it adds so much to, A Man Escaped is a great example. That would probably be the most accessible Robert Bresson film, because it's a prison breakout movie, and it's probably the most influential prison breakout movie there is. But it is very much all about, you spend a lot of time with one guy in a room hearing what's going on out there.
Oh, that
and
sounds cool.
There's a famous escape scene where he doesn't escape. It's very early in the movie, so it's not really a spoiler, but plus all the movie made in 1950. There is no spoilers for movies. Okay, so he's sitting in the middle of these two German officers. It's taking place during World War I and I think pretty sure World War. So there's this moment he's in the car and he's being driven to the prison camp, and he makes a quick dart out the door once the car stops because of an accident in front of them. He makes a quick dart and gets out of the car, and we just stay right in the car, and we just hear, and we hear him getting beat up, and we're just sitting in this empty parked car, and we're hearing it all. Then they bring him back into the car. It's all beat up, and then the car moves away, and I'm like, that's Robert Bresson almost in a nutshell, painting incredible images. He also believed if you want the sound to really penetrate the audience, then you want your image to be very flat and boring. And then vice versa. You want the image to be gorgeous and sumptuous and incredibly and take you into it, then keep the sound very minimal. You keep it, because he didn't believe that the brain can process sound and oral information as fully at the same time.
And that's
Does that make
why,
sense?
yeah, I'm reading up
Yeah.
on Toby Hooper and a lot about Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And a lot of what happens in the climax of those films is just an overload of sound and, visuals and audio,
Oh,
because he wanted to really disorient the viewer. And hearing you describe it like that, I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. You break that rule to achieve a very specific effect. Otherwise, keep the rules in place. But what you're talking about with that car scene, I immediately reminded of our, dear Mr. Quentin Tarantino at the end of Reservoir Dogs, when Mr. Pink takes the case and runs out of the building. There's a whole scene taking place out there where he confronts the cops and there's a shootout and everything, but we're stuck on Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth. And there's a part of me that's like, I kind of, this is cool, everything. I want to see what happens to these characters, but I also want to see what's going on out there.
yeah, but it's amazing. No, I think purposefully, I could be forgetting this last shot, but oh, I know. So the very last shot, I believe, is Harvey he's cradling Tim Roth, who's dying, and it's all over. And Mr. Pink's gone with the money here, and he's going, oh, he's doing his Harvey Keitel, crying. We all love to do Harvey Keitel crying, and then he pulls out his gun and he gets blown off screen. And I think we're just sitting there with like the most boring shot of just like an electric wire and a bland wall and maybe some green tile. Maybe that's that, or maybe that's the ear that I'm thinking of, where they cut the ear off.
Well, they do. He does play with the ear, but yeah, the last shot of Reservoir Dogs is because, in addition, and I had forgotten this until you started talking about it, there's the Mr. Pink thing where he goes out and he gets, shot up by the cops or whatever, but then the cops break into the warehouse and we are gradually pushing in on Roth and Keitel, and Roth makes his confession and Keitel is like, oh God. So he pulls out his gun, but we're constantly pushing in, and then eventually we settle on Harvey Keitel's face. And at that point, the cops are in the room with both of them saying, don't do it, buddy, drop your gun. And you're like, why am I not seeing this scene from a different angle? And it's completely intentional, but you're right. When Keitel falls out of the frame, I think we see the wall for a second, and then it cuts to black and credits.
Well, I know we probably got to wrap up here, but it is amazing to watch the extras of Reservoir Dogs, because they did film going to the ear severing scene. They did film that. They did film him basically straddling this guy and cutting his ear off and going. They filmed it like that, and then they filmed it the other way.
With just Michael Madsen, his back towards the camera, and then panning over. I think
that's the particular thing I'm thinking of, with the boring shot of just some electrical wire, and just like, and we're just looking at this for like 30 seconds as we're hearing Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Everyone, you think in your head, oh God, is this movie violent? Of course it is violent, but it's all suggestive violence. There's quite literally, you're seeing somebody getting hacked. It is all done with sound. And it's so underrated what sound can do to your nervous system, as opposed to a cool image.
Oh yeah.
It's like you're kind of seeking out an image, but sound kind of just waves physically right inside you and actually is moving something inside of you. So it's such a, when you see a giant Hollywood production, this is what I don't like about giant Hollywood productions, except for Chris Nolan, who's really very, does an interesting use of sound that some people hate and some people love. But they just throw everything at you. Everyone's getting paid a big paycheck, and they're just like, let's put the sound of the coffee cup. Let's put the sound of this guy breathing. Let's put the sound of the airplane that's flying overhead that I see there in the shot. I'm like, dude, you're not being creative. You're not being artistically selective at all with what you're putting in on the audio track. You're just blanketing everything you see. And you have to really like find the right post audio folks who get that. who get like, you don't have to fill every like, you don't have to Foley every goddamn thing, you know. Be extremely selective. Be at least a little, instead of, you know, a Hollywood movie, you're basically, the soundtrack's loud, the images are exploding. I'm just like, and that's why it kind of usually equals nothing emotionally, because you can't be and process it. Your eyes and your ears and your brain, they're like, I'm overloaded, so I'm just gonna eat my popcorn, I guess. I don't know.
Well, and that's sort of the paradox when I tell people like, oh, didn't you love that you know, big tentpole comic book movie or whatever? Like, no, I was bored. And they're like, how can you be bored? There was so much going on. I'm like, yeah, because there was so much going on. There's nothing to hook into. These movies aren't meant to, you know, a lot of them aren't meant to resonate. They're meant to stimulate for a moment, and then hopefully you come back the next week with some friends or something. But they got your money. That's all they care about. But,
yeah. It's, I mean, again, the bad ones do that.
Yeah.
And the good ones actually go like, look, we gotta give a shit about these people, you know. And then you get occasionally you get a pretty interesting Marvel movie. You'll get a Guardians of the Galaxy or a Winter Soldier or even the first Iron Man. I mean, shit, that's a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
That first Iron Man movie, he's not Iron Man for like an hour, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's really cool. Or no one's Batman. I mean, they invest. They know that, like, no, you've got to care about Indiana Jones or this scene is boring and stupid, you know? So.
Yeah. But enough about the Crystal Skull. No. But yeah, I mean.
More than boring and stupid.
Oh,
unnecessary.
God. Yeah.
Let's not talk about it. Moving on.
But no, I think it's a good place to wrap up. I mean, because Man Push Cart is
from Man Push Cart to Indiana Jones and Crystal Skull. I think that's
but no, I mean, I would love to see, even though I watched this movie on TV at home, I was thinking to myself the whole time, I would love to see this in a movie theater, specifically the music box, because again, that's the place people go to not be on their phones, to be respectful of the people around them, and also the art that they're being presented with, because it doesn't have the flash of the budget of a multi-million-dollar Hollywood production, but it's got something that's very emotionally and visually and you know, orally, AURALLY, immersive about it, that deserves to be seen communally. So yeah, hopefully if anyone's listening at the Repertoire theaters, get a Bahrani Film Festival going on. I will be there opening day.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward. It's such a weird thing. I'm sitting here talking to you about this because I just remember, you know, I started out the conversation this way. I just remember in 2005 or so when this movie came out that I'm like, I have to see this movie. I'm not sure why, but I have to see this movie. And as well with Chop Shop. I remember when that came out and hearing, I'm like, oh, that's right. I got to see Bahrani's that. Oh yeah, but keeping hearing, and you know how it goes. You miss the boat. Some things fall through the cracks, and so I'm just so blessed that I like randomly rediscover, like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to watch that movie for like 18 years. You know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Bahrani. It's taken that long. You know, but shit, you know, better late than never, I guess. But it's yeah, I'm really genuinely looking forward. I wanted to watch all of his movies before this interview, and I said, no, let me just focus on Man Push Cart. But yeah, Chop Shop, I've heard people like that movie even better. And
oh wow, well,
Goodbye Solo sounds right up my alley because it's very Abbas Kiarostami based. It seems like a little bit of a riff on a movie Taste of Cherry, which I like a lot, which is basically a movie about a guy driving around looking for somebody to bury him because he's going to kill himself.
Oh my God. Well,
yeah. So it's an amazing movie, and then Goodbye Solo is kind of a riff on that. Yeah.
Well, Chop Shop is next on my list, so maybe we can talk about that one too.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, definitely. I want to pretty much check out all of his films. I just want to make sure I got that name of that film correct. Goodbye Solo, I think what was called. Yes, am I getting it right? I don't know. He actually got nominated for an Oscar this past year. Did you know that?
No.
For, a movie I haven't seen called The White Tiger. It's an adapted screenplay, and he was nominated as a 2021 Oscar. So,
well, I'll have to catch up on that one too, because the only movie I'd seen of his beforehand was 99 Homes, which I thought was phenomenal. Kind of taking that, he's working with big Hollywood stars now, but in a movie that still managed to feel personal and real about the housing crisis. But yeah. All right, sir. Well, we'll cut it there. Thank you, Jer Sklar. This has been, I know we got down into some crazy weeds with this one, but it was a lot of fun.
I hope so, man. Yeah. Good talking to you as always. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, maybe we'll catch up on Chop Shop and some other Bahrani films maybe, but yeah, thanks again. First, well, where can people find you? Give your deets.
Oh yeah, I never do that. That's true. I need to do that. So yeah, you can reach out to me at satori.studio. That's my sort of website. You could also find me on Facebook and Twitter. I usually go by the name Jer Sklar. And you can drop me a line, or you can look me up on IMDb and email me. I don't know. And watch my movie, Tom of Your Life. It's now streaming on Amazon Prime. But really, we're here to talk about Man Push Cart. So watch Man Push Cart. That's on the Criterion Channel. An incredible movie and timely to me, even though it was made in 2005 in the post 9/11 New York, and it just is relevant as ever, if not more so. So
yeah, it's time. I think it's kind of timeless. I feel like I could watch this movie in 30 years and be like, yep, still works.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, sir. Well, thanks so much, and we'll catch you later.
Sounds good, Ian. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.